Alrighty, so we're starting to get back to the normal day for my News of the Week episode because, ever since the new year, I have done the News of the Week episode all over the place. I sometimes do it on Monday, I sometimes do it on Tuesday, I sometimes do it on Thursday, and usually, if you watch my channel long enough, you know I usually do a News of the Week episode, and especially in the off season, on Wednesday and also on Saturday. And since today is Wednesday, at least there is started to be some kind of normalcy. The fact that I'm finally back to the routine of doing my News of the Week episode on the day that I've always said that I'm going to do. But that being said, in terms of some of the news that happened in MLS, and this time I actually didn't have to switch the boards. I mean, I tried to squeeze as much room as possible to just kind of put all the news on one board because it's kind of a bit of a hassle in terms of me have to change the board again. Though I will say that I do apologize if you can't really read the text very well because I'm trying to not write it too big and just kind of squeeze every single news on a single board. But obviously the biggest news coming out of this week happened yesterday when the Houston Dynamo has officially announced that they are no longer going to be the team that is always known for being cheap in the league. Like, the Dynamo is notoriously being a team that does not want to spend money, and that for the first time yesterday, they actually splashed some big money. And albeit it's not really in a way where, $4.3 million nowadays in MLS in terms of spending on transfer isn't as big as what we see, especially, we have some of the most ambitious teams spending like $10 million, and even the most ambitious team spending like $15 million on transfer. But for the Houston Dynamo, it's a start because this team, again, hasn't spent anywhere close to the amounts that they've just spent here, which they splashed $4.3 million to sign Paraguayan striker Sebastian Ferreira. Now, there's no doubt that, when they spend that much money to sign a guy like him, and especially with them looking to trying to build a foundation, especially on the attack of this long rebuild, they better hope that it, of course, will work out. And from what I heard about Sebastian Ferreira is that he is a guy that has done very well in Paraguay and have been the Golden Boot winner of the team that he was with Ascension down in Paraguay. So he's definitely the real deal, and he's another player that is kind of your typical young South American player that could potentially come to MLS to develop in a way where he can potentially move on to Europe for a big sum of money, and we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case, and whether if he is going to be finally the guy that they want to, and a guy that they've been looking to try. I mean, they really haven't had a good number 9 ever since Mauro Manotas left this team, and that they hope that Ferreira is going to be the guy that is going to be similar to how Manotas was with the Houston Dynamo a couple of years ago. Now, Sporting KC have signed German center back Robert Valter, I think that's how it's pronounced, from NK Maribor, and they're also in talk to acquire Cyprus international winger Marianos, and I'm gonna absolutely butcher this name. I think the T is silent, so I think it's Zanis. That's how you say it. But anyway, in terms of these two signing, well, one of them of course is official. The other one is pretty close to being so. I think Sporting KC must have watched my Moving Forward series episode, because one thing I've talked about in the Moving Forward series episode with Sporting KC is that they definitely need to get younger, and these two signing is definitely that initiative with both of these guys, I think, being 20 years old, and that they're definitely trying to use the U22 initiative and trying to get a younger squad in their team. Now, that being said, I'm not sure if both of these guys are going to be regular starter for this SKC team, but there are going to be some good depth players for these team, and maybe guys that could come in, play in a couple of games, or maybe even come off the bench to get some experience before they might be the future in terms of taking over guys that is currently in the position that potentially could be leaving the team, or could be retiring in a couple of years and be stepping into that starting role. But again, this is good for Sporting KC to recognize that, with an aging squad that they need to, of course, get younger, and they also have promote that initiative to trying to get younger with the way that they're definitely trying their best to promote some of the guys from the academy. And Sporting KC, in terms of the academy, people don't realize that they actually have a really good academy. I mean, it's not an academy that is well talked like the one we hear about FC Dallas, the New York Red Bulls, the Philadelphia Union, and those kind of academy. But it's a respectful academy where they do produce some good players out of that too. But this is another this is just a sign where they're not just going to rely on their academy, but also trying to get some overseas signing and some young guys to hopefully step up into this team. Now, the Colorado Rapids have signed Brian Acosta from the re-entry draft, and this is another Dallas player or former Dallas player that have joined the Colorado Rapids. I mean, it feels like the Rapids and FC Dallas have a very good partnership in terms of trading players. Like, it feels like if you're an FC Dallas player that doesn't work out with the team, you might as well just go to the Colorado Rapids. I mean, this trend really kind of only started when Kellen Acosta decided to join the Rapids, which was really kind of a head-scratching move, because that was during the time when Acosta was pretty much linked with a lot of European team, and people were very surprised the fact that he joined the Rapids when the Rapids were still a bomb feeder. But ever since, it's kind of have worked out. I mean, guys like Michael Barrios have kind of joined the Rapids after his time with Dallas was running out. And the same case with Brian Acosta, who I know Dallas fans will say that he isn't really that good and that he can be a very frustrating player to see. Well, maybe this is another guy that needs a change of scenery, and knowing the fact that the Rapids have always been very smart in terms of making some of these signings within the league and find these MLS proven player, I won't be surprised they would develop Brian Acosta to be a very decent player, and I also will be interested to see, I think he probably is going to be maybe back up with Mark Anthony Kay, unless if the Rapids decide to play a 2D mid in their position, and that maybe Acosta could get regular minutes there. But I won't be surprised. He's going to be a good player there with the Rapids, and then Dallas fans will kind of be head-scratching of how in the world did the Rapids allow him to be a good player when we had him. He tends to be one of the most frustrating player, and another example of the flop signings that they have always made in the transfer window. Because remember, Brian Acosta was a DP with FC Dallas, and he has looked nothing like a designated player when he was playing with FC Dallas. Now, speaking of designated player, another designated player that was supposed to be a TAM player, but obviously, actually, I don't want to have to once again beat the dead horse in terms of talking about that situation that Inter Miami has to deal with. But anytime when Blaise Matuidi's name bring up, I can't help to have to kind of bring up a little bit. But the good news for Inter Miami is that they don't have to worry about him anymore, because he is set to leave Inter Miami on a free transfer to Atletico Madrid. And, even though they didn't get any money out of that, and that move that they made, which, it's hard to believe that when they made that move back in their first year, and it was in September, everybody thought that was a steal of the century in the league, and it turns out that was not the case. And not only the fact that it turns out that signing was not only illegal, but also the fact that Blaise Matuidi, probably one of the biggest flop we have ever seen in MLS history. Like, he just completely fell off a cliff during his time with Inter Miami, and I'm kind of surprised that he's even getting a chance to go join another big club like Atletico Madrid. But I guess maybe he's just a guy that maybe doesn't fit in MLS, and maybe play when he does go back to Europe. Maybe he'll be much better. And not to mention the fact that, when he was with Inter Miami, he didn't really have a lot of supporting cast. So with him going to Atletico Madrid, he's going to get a better supporting cast, and I won't be surprised he'll be much better doing there. And then Inter Miami fans will think, how in the world did we not get that version of Blaise Matuidi, but instead get a guy that looked like his career is about to be done, and just completely washed up when he arrived to the team. Now, Jesus Medina, he is going to be leaving NYCFC and join CSKA Moscow on a free transfer. So I guess Jesus Medina is another example of a guy that actually made it to Europe, and that, in some way NYCFC did kind of sell Jesus Medina off to Europe when they first bought him. That was kind of one of their vision. But I think one of the things that they did not realize is that they kind of had to cut him, and now he's going to be joining a European team on a free transfer. But nevertheless, I mean, when NYCFC did deny Jesus Medina a contract, I don't think that was a lot of surprise, because he's been a very frustrating player at NYCFC. And I mean, he's been at times have shown that brilliance and that transfer fee that NYCFC had to pay for Jesus Medina, which I think it was like $5.5 million. But then there's time where he looks nothing like a guy that's worth $5.5 million. So I think NYCFC, knowing the fact that they also have some good upcoming talent in their pipeline, they might as well just kind of cut loss to Jesus Medina and free up a little bit of a deep piece spot there. And yeah, I wish Medina the best going to CSKA Moscow and going to the Russian Premier League. I mean, he's joining a team that it's they're a team that I wouldn't say they're kind of like the powerhouse of the Russian Premier League. I mean, I know people might think that that's the case with CSKA Moscow, but there's actually a lot of teams that has been decent in the Russian Premier League. So I wouldn't say CSKA Moscow is just that dominant force there, but they're definitely a team that always compete for the title in that league, and we'll see whether or not when Jesus Medina joins to that team, that of course will be the case. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is player receiving contract extension, and because we had tons of players getting contract extension, probably the most I've seen in the past couple of days, I'm not even going to spend time to talk about each one of them, because if I do that, it's going to take an hour to talk about in this News of the Week episode. So instead, I'll just kind of list these players that had received contract extension, and I will say that there are some players that deserve contract extension, and some that it's kind of a bit of a head scratcher, and then some that receive contract extension because they just want to be with the team and continue to kind of earn some money while not actually making an appearance. But either way, in terms of the contract extension and the players that received from these last couple of days, we got Tate Schmidt, Jack Elliott, Victor Vasquez, Matt Brazano, Brett Shane, Jack Price, Harris Medunian, Rodrigo Shago, Danny Wilson, Mark Anthony Kay, Keegan Rosenberry, Kelvin Rome, and Stefan Cleveland all received contract extension with their respective team. But yeah, moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about transfer reports. So one of the big transfer talks from these past couple of days is the situation with Paul Arriola, because Paul Arriola, there was report that he looked like he could potentially go back to Liga MX and actually going to be joining a powerhouse team in Liga MX and arguably the most hated team in Liga MX, that is Club America. But now there is report that maybe Arriola might stay in MLS, and that there actually is a report that Charlotte FC and FC Dallas is looking to try to sign Paul Arriola for $2 million general allocation money. Now, obviously, that is a huge sum of money, and I mean, I know Paul Arriola is a decent player and he is a regular for the U.S. men's national team, but is he worth the $2 million general allocation money? Like, that seems like a little bit of an overkill, but I guess, for Charlotte FC and FC Dallas, that might not be the case. I mean, if there is one team out of these two that kind of makes sense in terms of signing them, I guess maybe Charlotte FC, getting a good veteran present in Paul Arriola, and knowing the fact that they pretty much have unlimited general allocation money because of the amount that they made in the expansion draft. This could definitely make sense. But for FC Dallas, I mean, it would be a good signing, but $2 million is just an absolute ridiculous price. And the other thing that I will warn about these two teams potentially signing Paul Arriola is that he's been having some injury issue in the past too. So do you want to maybe pay a huge sum of money for a guy that he will definitely be a decent winger, and I would consider him a top 10 winger in MLS, but he's also going to be kind of injury riddled and also going to have to be called up for the national team and miss games doing that. So I don't think this is a good investment for either of these teams too, but we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case, or whether or not indeed Paul Arriola is going to be going to somewhere else, because it kind of seems like DC are really looking to try to transfer him to somewhere else, which again, I mean, I know last year when I talked about this and how they loaned him to Swansea City, I just didn't kind of understand because of the way that they of course have a guy that well, they all have some problems in terms of not having enough attacking talent, and now they just kind of loan their best attacking talent to somewhere else. That kind of didn't make sense, and once they kind of got back Paul Arriola, it's no surprise that this attack really started to be clicking. So again, I guess maybe this is just DC want to maybe find some ways to maybe find another player that can be even more decent than Paul Arriola. But in this case, again, I just feel like it's best for them to just him. Like, there's always the case where, if you're an MLS team and you receive a huge amount of money, whether it's within MLS or other places, sometimes it's always best to just kind of keep them, even if those offers are very tempting. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, is that there is a report suggests that the Chicago Fire is close to signing Xherdan Shaqiri as a designated player. Remember Xherdan Shaqiri, a guy that started his career with Bayern Munich before going to Liverpool, and even though he wasn't a regular starter, he was still a guy that was a very impact sub and tends to score big goals with Liverpool at the best time. Well, these days he actually has been spending time with Lyon, although I've heard that he kind of fell out with Lyon and he could potentially be leaving the team on a free, and it seems like the Chicago Fire is looking to try to sweep into this deal, and I think this would be a good sign for him, because Shaqiri, even though he's kind of feel like he's been around for a very long time, he's only 30 years old. I mean, he's still a relatively young player, and, getting him as a DP, I guess the only risk I would say is that, if he doesn't really hit the ground running and that he doesn't look like the guy that he was during his time with Liverpool, that could be backfire a little bit. But nevertheless, I would say that this is kind of almost like a younger Bastian Schweinsteiger signing that the Fire is trying to do, and we know Schweinsteiger was decent in his first year with the Fire, and then he kind of fall off the cliff because his career kind of he started to age a little bit, and his career was definitely at an end. But nevertheless, I think if they do sign Shaqiri, it's going to be a decent signing to kick off what would be a new era that the Chicago Fire are embarking. Now, Charlotte FC and Philadelphia Union is reported to sign PAOK striker Carroll, and I am going to butcher this because you know me with Polish name. I usually don't get it right the first time, but I think it's with Dutski. That's how you pronounce. And again, this is a rumor that, it's unsurprising that both of these teams are looking to try to get a number 9. Though I did hear that Charlotte FC did sign Christian Titi Ortiz just recently, and that it's kind of surprised that they've already got number 9 and now they're going to look for another number 9. I mean, unless they're going to be playing 2 striker, that would be kind of an interesting move. But for the Philadelphia Union, I think this wouldn't make sense. And this kind of also confirmed that it seems like Kasper Schmeichel is not coming back to the Union. So the Union are just doing a sensible thing of, if our Polish striker decided to leave, let's just replace him with another Polish striker. I mean, that of course would work out. But, I haven't heard a lot about this guy, and, we'll see whether or not if he does come to MLS, whether or not if he is going to adapt. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, and this is probably the most shocking transfer rumor that recently heard, but LAFC is close to acquire Vancouver Whitecaps goalkeeper Maxime Crépeau for a record, not for a record, but for around $1 million general allocation money. Now, what is so shocking about this, and actually accidentally repeat myself because I talk about Vancouver and I put 2 Vancouver here, so let me just erase that. But what's so shocking about this move is the fact that I didn't think Maxime Crépeau was going to be leaving the Whitecaps. Like, there is no way the Whitecaps would let go of their number 1, and especially considering one of the top 5 goalkeeper in the league, even for the amount that LAFC is trying to send them. And I get that, they do have a decent backup goalkeeper in Thomas Hassel, and me, in terms of believing in Thomas Hassel, and I always rate him to be a guy that could be the successor for Maxime Crépeau, but I just feel like he still isn't ready yet, and that, I mean, this feels like it's a bit of a rush to trying to, sell Crépeau to another team and basically promote Hassel. But that being said, you can also see that LAFC is very desperate in terms of trying to find a goalkeeper. I mean, they only have one goalkeeper in their roster in Thomas Romero after they decided to not sign Blackman and also Cesiaga into this team. So it's understandable that they're trying to go big in terms of signing. But if you're the Whitecaps, I would say you should do anything to try to block this move, because again, I don't think this would make sense considering the fact that Crépeau last year, in some of the games, even though I know the backline for the Whitecaps was much improved last season, there's time where Crépeau simply bail the back line out and make some incredible save. And as I said, he's easily one of the top 5 goalkeeper in the league. And the fact that they decided to trade him to another team is kind of unthinkable. And again, even though they do have a good backup lining up with Thomas Hassel, I just think it's not his time yet. So we shall see whether or not this, of course, would happen. I mean, I guess maybe LAFC is also saying, well, you took our one of our defender in Tristan Blackman. I think it's time for you to kind of maybe pay up a little bit and use a gentle agreement that we pick up one of your player too. But I think if you would have asked the Whitecaps to trade Maxime Crépeau and Tristan Blackman, yeah, that would not be a good trade, and it would really be a trade that I think LAFC would have easily won with the way that, I'm not saying Blackman is a bad player, but to trade one of your best goalkeeper, that's just not really a good option. But we shall see whether or not if that is going to be the case. But now moving on, and away from talk about transfer signings and rumors, to talk about the U.S. men's national team. So there is a report that they're going to be announcing that they're going to host their final World Cup qualifying home game against Panama at Exploria Stadium once again. And in fact, this actually is no longer a rumor, because I did check today again, and that the U.S. Soccer Federation did announce that the U.S. men's national team is going to be playing their final World Cup qualifying home game against Panama at Exploria Stadium. And let's just hope that, this time, not only this time, let's hope we maybe have a repeat of the last World Cup qualifying cycle when the U.S. played against Panama and won 4-0 in that game. And hope that maybe this time, not only we win again, but we're in a much better, or in the next game, we actually would able to win and able to move on into the World Cup. Because let's not talk about what happened in the next game against Trinidad and Tobago and that infamous night in Cuba. That is kind of the reason there is so much pressure for the U.S. to qualify for the World Cup and do well in this World Cup qualifying stage. Now, a thing that I kind of found very interesting, I think this is Charles Bohm that kind of wrote an article about this and wrote a report about this, is that there is a suggest that the U.S. could have actually played their next two home World Cup qualifying game not in Minnesota and in Columbus, but instead in Portland and San Jose. And the reason why they decided not to do it is because once Canada decided to play the U.S. in Hamilton, they decided to kind of scrap those games in the West Coast because travel was going to be an issue. Now, I do understand that travel, of course, would be an issue because, on a short rest, flying across the other side of the country is definitely not a ideal way logistically. And not to mention the fact that if they want to choose between playing in a frigid winter condition against Central American team against in a weather condition where it's still gonna be cold in Portland, but definitely nowhere near as cold as what we're gonna see in those games in Columbus and in Minnesota, and then play in San Jose, who San Jose is an area that it does get cold if you of course live here. I mean, for me it does get a little bit cold, but nowhere near at the level those Midwestern city has. So it makes sense in terms of winter condition and the advantage of the home field advantage will definitely be in favor of the U.S. But that being said, this was definitely a huge missed opportunity. I feel like for the U.S., the fact that Portland has been a city that's been talked about a lot of hosting being a U.S. men's national team game. I mean, in fact, Portland and Seattle has been two cities that's been talked about, and really the only reason why the U.S. have not hosted a lot of games in the Cascadia region, and really haven't done so ever since I remember they did host a U.S. game in Portland, I think like 9 or 10 years ago in the Gold Cup. But the big reason why they decided not to is because of the turf, and the turf is really kind of the Achilles heel of why the U.S. don't want to play there, because if the U.S. play in Portland and Seattle, guarantee it's gonna sold out every single game. So I feel like maybe I know the turf situation is not ideal, but I feel like it's time for the U.S. Soccer Federation to kind of get over with it, or at least maybe pressure Portland and maybe pressure the Timbers front office to finally, of course, maybe install turf. And obviously you can maybe say the same thing about Seattle, though I think Seattle will have an objection to that because it's going to be hard for them to change grass, especially when they're sharing in the stadium with the Seahawks. But at least for Portland, maybe this is a way to pressure to maybe install grass at Providence Park, though knowing what the situation that the Timbers front office has been dealing with, their fans being very angry about the scandal situation. I think that's kind of the last thing they want to really think about. But nevertheless, this is a huge missed opportunity, and also a huge missed opportunity for me to attend another World Cup qualifying game. I mean, I did attend that World Cup qualifying game against Honduras. That was a historical game because the U.S. not only won 6-0 in that game, one of the biggest goal scoring deficits that the U.S. has had. But that was the game when Clint Dempsey scored a hat-trick in that game, and that's, I think, one of the few times the U.S. actually had a player score a hat-trick in a World Cup qualifier. So, yeah, this feels like it's a missed opportunity for me to attend another World Cup qualifying game, but in reality, it's a huge missed opportunity for them to finally play a national team game in pretty much the hot bed area for soccer, that is the Cascadia region. But now moving on into the last news involving CONCACAF announcing that VAR will indeed be used in the World Cup qualified and in the CONCACAF Champions League. This is not really any surprising news because I mentioned that it was going to happen, and I've also will reiterate what I said last time when I talked about this news, and that is, as much as it's good the fact that CONCACAF finally implemented VAR in terms of both of the competition, don't be surprised it's still going to be blown call, because at the end of the day, who's going to be in charge of those VAR? Oh yeah, that's right, it's going to be those same CONCACAF referee, and I guarantee that there's going to be controversy, and there's going to be people that's going to be angry of the fact that what's the point of CONCACAF using VAR if they're still going to blow the call in at the end of the day. I mean, it sucks, but it's just kind of the nature of CONCACAF, and the reason why that whole quote of a team getting CONCACAF, that's not going to go away, even when CONCACAF is using VAR in both of these competition in the future. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news. And if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.